What is up, Knicks fans? Welcome back to yet another episode of Fireside Knicks with your hosts, Dylan and Davin. And today we're going to talk about a guy that I don't think a lot of people expected to play as well as he's been playing, Josh Hart. Beginning in the season, it was kind of like, what's his role going to look like? Nobody really knew. I don't think Josh Hart even knew what his role was going to look like. He scored 2 points in the preseason altogether, and there was a lot of concerns about whether or not he should be continuing to be in the starting five or whether or not he should come off the bench. Those concerns kind of lingered a little bit to the first games of the season when they were 5-6, but now they've won 4 in a row. I think we're really starting to see Josh Hart's impact overall this season, and when you really look at it from a whole scale, he's had a very good season, and this is probably the best season of his career so far. So we're just going to talk about that. So Davin, first off, tell me how you're doing, and secondly, tell me about what you see from Josh Hart this season. What have you been seeing so far through these first 14 games from him? Or 15 games?
Doing great, man. Doing great. I can't complain at all. I will say, no, Josh Hart's been looking for phenomenal numbers. Best he's had. Field goal percentage, 59% right now. 14 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists is Josh Hart's stats right now. He's playing fifth in the league in minutes per game. So Josh Hart's really the glue guy. He's the guy that's really operating the bench and connecting that to the starting lineup. He's really making sure everyone's playing effective. And I think it's really big that's going oversight with Josh Hart is he's allowing these guys to be comfortable as they get in their roles. Like Mikal Bridges, he's allowing the Jalen Brunson to go through his woes in the beginning of the season because he's playing so effectively right now. He's doing all the little things, assisting, rebounding. We know he's a great rebounder as a guard. And then he's out here scoring what you wouldn't expect. Like last against Phoenix, 19 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists. Are you serious? On 72% from the field, 80% true shooting. That's Josh Hart in 2024. You couldn't have guessed how it was going to happen based off of how we saw things when the season started. We saw how, like you said, he came to the media talking about he's not too familiar with his role will be. Last time we saw a player do that was Quentin Grimes, and it didn't go too well for Quentin Grimes. So I was like, I remember when that initially happened, I was like, Josh, I don't know why you would go to the media saying that, but we're going to pick it up and run with it because that's just what we do. So it's very interesting to see how effective he's been since the preseason. I guess he's a real Tibbs guy though, so I really had no worry about him. That's why it made the quote kind of interesting for me too. Like you're a Tibbs guy. Props to Tibbs as well because he's found a whole entire roster of guys that foster to how he coaches, and I think that's really going overlooked as well because these guys they're all working under his tutelage. So the fact that Tibbs has this tree of players under him that's all willing to sell out and do what they have to do to make sure they affect winning, then that's all it's about. And Josh Hart, he's that guy. He's probably the epitome of that guy.
Yeah, and I think really what's been most impactful for me, from what I've noticed, of course, you have the rebounding and, of course, the up scoring a little bit. The playmaking is what stands out to me, though, with Josh Hart. The Knicks already, have had a few games with 30 assists this year, and they're like top 15 in assists per game. Last year, they were 29th in assists per game. I think really Josh Hart is making the biggest difference, really, in the playmaking. Because, of course, Brunson's obviously an improved playmaker now that Towns is here. Mikal Bridges is a facilitator as well. Karl-Anthony Towns is a good passer. But Josh Hart really makes a big difference. And, yes, sometimes I would like to see Josh Hart shoot a little bit when he's open instead of pass it up for somebody else. But at the same time, I like that he's willing to keep the ball moving at the same time because, there are some players that they'll get the ball and then they just freeze, they stand there, and the ball just freezes altogether, it's not moving, lots of one-and-dones or just really bad decisions, right? Josh Hart's usually making the right decision, though. He's making the right read, he's looking for the guy who's hot, he's looking for the guy who's got it going a little bit. And he does the right things. And, of course, lately he's been shooting the ball a little bit more, too. Of course, like, slowly throughout the season, he's upped his shooting volume. And he's been efficient. I mean, he's shooting, I think, above 50% from the floor and, like, 35% from three. That's a very solid number. That's along with the 14 points that he's averaging, which is actually the lowest in the starting five, which I think is very, very, very good when you really look at the starting five like that all 5 guys are averaging at least 14 a game. Now, I don't think that's necessarily sustainable, but at the same time, I do think that we can see all 5 guys average double figures by the time the season's over. I do think that's realistic. I think Josh Hart will be closer to more like 11 or 12 per game because I don't expect him to be scoring as much like when Deuce McBride returns to the floor and when Precious Achiuwa comes back. I don't expect Hart to be scoring as much as he is at the moment, but regardless, I do think the fact that he's doing a little bit of everything. He gives you, the scoring when you need him to. He gives you the rebounding, of course. He's one of the top rebounders in the league, and he's only 6'4". I mean, he's undoubtedly the best rebounding guard. Nevertheless, one of the top rebounders in the league. Underrated playmaker. He's making the right decisions. He's got 5 assists per game. This guy does a little bit of everything, and he's averaging over a steal per game as well, I should mention. Very strong off-ball defender. This guy gives you a little bit of everything, and I think that's really what you want out of him. He I had said too before the season began that I didn't mind the fact that he was starting still. I know there was that conversation about whether or not he should be starting or whether McBride should be starting. Now, of course, I see the arguments for McBride starting, but at the same time, I think Josh Hart gives you just a little bit of everything to where you kind of need that. We don't have a lot of depth at the moment, and Josh Hart kind of gives you all that depth in one player. He gives you an additional playmaker. He gives you an additional rebounder, an additional scorer at the same time too, and a solid defender. He's also very good in transition, as we know. He's like unstoppable one-on-one in transition, coast to coast. I don't know how he does it every time, but he's one of the more tough and physical guys that the Knicks have on this team, and he's making a big difference. I think really that he's honestly one of the most important players to this team, because if you don't have Josh Hart in that starting five, this could be a whole different team right now. It really could. I mean, he gives you he gives you a little bit of everything to the point where he is that important, because you need the extra rebounding, you need the playmaking, all that stuff that I just mentioned. You need all of that. You need all of that usually you get most of that from multiple players, but you're getting this out of one guy. And I think that's really what makes him so valuable. He's able to do so much for you, and he's just one guy who's 6'4". You don't expect much, but he said it himself. He comes in the game, just runs around and messes things up. He doesn't go out there to kind of prove something or anything. He's just out there playing basketball, having fun, trying to adapt to his role. I think really he's the one that I think is one of the more important players. I know we just talked about OG Anunoby being probably one of the most important Knicks and probably most consistent, but Josh Hart can't be overlooked. He can't. He's been really good this season, and this is probably the best season he's had in his career. He's had some good seasons in his career, don't get me wrong, but this season right now, I think this is going to be the best season he's ever had, because it's the most opportunity he's ever been given, one, but also two, I mean, he's just performing at a high level. I don't think we're going to see anything like All-Stars or anything like that from him. No, I'm not expecting that from him, but the play he's been giving us this season is exactly what I could be asking for out of him. It's exactly what I want. I'm happy to see him doing it, and I just hope it continues. That's really all I can say. I want to give you an opportunity, though, to kind of jump in on that, because I know I said a lot, so.
Oh no, man. Yeah. So basically, the way I see with Josh Hart, like he just makes the team better, man. He makes the team better in every single facet. There was a familiar situation where people were talking about Jericho Sims is not being used as a lob threat like he should be, this and that. And there was Josh Hart. I remember like the next game or game later throwing lobs to Jericho Sims. And he was kind of the one that I feel like started that, Jericho Sims trend away. He's having good game after good game just off the base of having great teammates like Josh Hart. And Josh Hart, every team wants a Josh Hart. That's really what it is, what it borders down to. Every single team would love to have a player like him on their team. Tips in the New York Knicks having him is such a luxury that it cannot go overstayed, like you said. OG Anunoby's been great. But as far as consistency goes, as far as will, tenacity, Josh Hart brings that every single night, every single time. And the playoffs, that's when I believe, like as effective as he is, he might drop down to like you said, 11, 12 points per game. In the playoffs, he's going to be back up again. He's going to be up again because he's going to be that guy that teams are not going to game plan for. Teams will not be game planning because you don't know what he's going to bring. You don't know what his approach will be. And that's the thing about the NBA players as well. Like everyone has a niche. Everyone has a way that they play. You know what's they're going to bring to the table every night, how they're going to approach shots they're taking, the amount of shots. Not Josh Hart. Josh Hart, he kind of just reads the flow of the offense. If someone's having an off night, then you know Josh Hart's getting more shots. And it's not even just because it's going to be that way. It's just that's the way he plays. He doesn't play off of, he's going to make sure he gets his shots. He's going to make the right shots, take the right shots. And that's the way Josh Hart plays. Ultimate team guy, ultimate glue guy. And getting him for the way we got him in that trade for Portland, just be real. That's one of the biggest steals we don't talk about. That was insane. So, like, the Josh Hart, even in the situation that he's in, it's a luxury. It's really a luxury. And I'm looking forward to seeing how he plays this season. I will say that getting him down a little bit, like everyone getting down, when these players get back and healthy, like you said, get back and healthy, get these minutes down, get these guys good. A player like Josh Hart, he's not going to complain. And I respect the hell out of that for Josh Hart at the same time, man. We're going to need you when it gets around April and May. So let's go ahead and make sure we get that. That's probably the biggest thing I have to say about that, honestly. But other than that, he's the most confident in his shot right now. He said in the interview the other day, he's confident right now. He let the people say that he can't shoot or he's taking back. Let them be the ones having that discourse, and he's going to keep playing his type of game.
Yeah, and I think really it's good that you mentioned the playoffs thing, because this guy obviously last season stepped up huge in the postseason. He came through when we had a lot of guys injured. He played pretty much the entire game, the entire postseason. He barely sat like all 13 games of those playoffs, and he averaged 14 points and 11 rebounds. I mean, again, this guy is 6'4", and he's averaging 11 rebounds in a playoff series. That's ridiculous. And really, it's like I said too, it's important that you have Josh Hart around because, of course, the playoff performance, you need him to be able to, step up when, say, Jalen Brunson is not having a good night, or when Karl Anthony Towns ain't having a good night either. There's going to be nights where one of those two guys, or even someone like OG or Mikhail, is going to have an off night. But Josh Hart's giving you the little things to where he's kind of keeping you in games. I mean, we see it all the time. You know, the Knicks are in slumps. They can't really defend or they can't grab rebounds. Josh Hart comes flying in and grabs the rebounds. Or he comes flying in, goes coast to coast, all of a sudden, and one transition layup, and boom, now you have momentum. Like, he gives you so much energy, and that's what really the Knicks need. I mean, the Knicks have a few energy guys on this team. Of course, we're talking about Hart here, but, you know, Cameron Payne's also been a good energy guy, and look how much the bench has been playing better of late because of that. You know, they've been doing their own thing. Even with McBride out, they've still been playing pretty well with Payne leading the charge in the second unit. With Hart in the starting five, though, you know, I feel like entering the season, he was kind of an afterthought. You know, everyone kind of just looked at him like, oh, he's not going to do much. He'll just give you, you know, your occasional rebounds, some points, maybe some assists here and there, but that's about it. I think he's doing a lot more than that right now this season, and like I've been saying, he's one of the most important players to his team, one of the most valuable because of all that he can do. You know, the things he's been doing, like I said, you usually ask him for multiple players to give you that. You're asking for, you know, your backup centers to give you the rebounds. You're asking for your backup guards to give you the extra assists. You know, your sixth man to give you extra points, or your shooting guard to give you extra points, whatever. Josh Hart is the fifth guy in the starting five, and he's giving you all of that in one player. That's what makes him so valuable. That's why I think he's really the team's most important, one of the team's most important players. You know, I think really I don't think there's really a clear argument for which one Nick is the most important, because I think all five guys in the starting five are very important, and I think the guys off the bench are very important too. But Josh Hart just does so much for you that you just can't afford to lose him. You can't have him go down with an injury or any of that stuff. And it's good that you mentioned the trade too, because that trade looks greater by the day. It really does. You know, obviously, once we first got Josh Hart 2 years ago, you know, they riled off 9 straight wins or whatever it was, and just they took off from the jump. We all know right away it was an immediate impact, right? But now, looking at the long-term scale, you know, now we've had a full season with Hart, and now we have another full season of Hart, and we're going to have more and more full seasons with Hart as long as, you know, he stays here and doesn't get traded one day, which I really don't want that to happen. I think he's that important to where he should not get traded, because I know that there's conversations about Knicks needing to add some bench pieces. I don't think Josh Hart should be a part of any of those conversations. I think he's too important to just let go like that, but that's besides the point. The trade with the Blazers, where, you know, you traded away Cam Reddish, who wasn't really playing, and when he was playing, he wasn't playing good, and you traded away, I think, 1 first-round pick and 2 other guys who didn't play at all for Josh Hart, and seeing the value we're getting out of that, dude, it's an amazing trade. I mean, one of the best trades the Knicks have pulled off in recent years, to be honest with you, just because of how impactful he's been since the moment he came here. You know, of course, he has the Villanova connection, you know, playing with Brunson, now Bridges, and of course last year he was with DiVincenzo and Brunson. So of course I'm sure that helps a little bit, but I think really he's just that good of a player to where he can adapt to any kind of role. You know, we saw him come off the bench when he first got traded here. He was off the bench for most of last season until the injuries came about and he became a starter, and then he became impactful as a starter. This year he's a starter, and look how well he's playing as we're sitting here talking about it. You know, he's a guy who's willing to make changes to his game, willing to adapt to a role. Yes, at times it can be confusing, but even to him, he was very confused about what his role was going to look like at the start of the year, because he didn't really score in the preseason. He didn't really do a whole lot. You know, you have Bridges still trying to figure out his role. Towns still trying to figure out his role. Brunson trying to figure out his role with these new guys as well. You know, and then you, of course, you can't forget about OG. So then it leaves Josh Hart with like, well, what am I here for? You know, what Josh Hart is there for is for all the things we've been talking about this video. All the little things. The rebounding, the playmaking, the defense, all that. That's what he's there for. I don't care if Josh Hart scores 4 or 5 points per game. I don't care. If he's giving me, you know, close to 10 rebounds and close to 6 or 7 assists a night, that's all I can ask for out of him. I don't need him to score. I don't need him to do anything crazy with that. If he gives me the other things that I just mentioned, the Knicks are golden. I mean, we see right now the Knicks are already a top 2 offense in the NBA, second highest offensive rating. Of course, the defense needs some work, but Josh Hart has been a solid defender this season. It's not his fault. You know, the defensive flaws, of course, rely on the inside. You know, the paint defense, the rim protection. That's where we've been lacking defensively. And of course, Mikal Bridges has not been very good defensively either, but I have faith that that'll turn around at some point. I don't think that's going to last all season. But my point that I'm trying to make is that Josh Hart gives you so much of, you know, it sounds cliche, but he does a little bit of everything to where it becomes so much more meaningful. You know, those little things mean so much now. It really does, and it's why the Knicks are as good as they've been. Of course, 9-6 and 9-6 start the year. You're probably thinking like, oh well, the Knicks haven't been that good to start the year. They're starting to get going, guys. They're starting to
Yeah.
click. They're starting to click. Josh Hart has figured out his role too with these guys. All 5 guys are seeming to figure out where they belong in the starting 5, and the sky's the limit for this team, guys. It really is. I think really. Of course, they're not a perfect team. They still got to work defensively. They still got a lot of areas to clean up on that side of the ball, which I do think will come at some point. Tom Thibodeau is a great coach, great defensive-minded coach. They'll, of course, get healthy again, too. Achua will come back. Robinson will come back. Or they'll make a move for a defender or make a move for additional bench pieces, whatever they'll do. Point is, this is not the final product. This is far from it. The starting 5 is pretty final product, yes, but the rest of the team is not. It's not a final product. We're going to be seeing a lot of different rotations and different lineups at some point throughout the year, and Josh Hart's going to be a big piece of that. He's going to be. He's going to be a huge piece of that. He's going to run the second unit a lot. He's going to do all these types of things, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think he's going to have a fantastic season. So far, he's having the best season of his career, in my opinion, and I think it's only going to continue. I have no reason to believe it'll slow down. I want to give you an opportunity to lay out your final thoughts on this before we wrap the video up, because I could talk about Josh Hart all day. Really, I can.
Yeah,
He does so much.
Good. No, he's a fantastic player, or ultimate glue guy. I cannot say enough about him being a Swiss Army knife. And like you said again, the players being allowed to figure out their roles, along with Josh Hart being the most consistent in that time. Like Cat was playing phenomenal since the year started, but beyond him, it was just Josh Hart that was definitely putting on a great performance night in, night out, doing what he needs to do in his role, while everyone else is figuring it out. And that's the kind of player Josh Hart is. He's the bridge that's going to connect the first unit, second unit. He's going to be that bridge. He's going to be that player. We try to say Mikal Bridges a little bit here and there. He'll run a little bit with him, but he's not going to be the guy that Josh Hart will be as far as being a playmaker, facilitator, and things like that on offense and defense. So it's like, that's the way I see it. Josh Hart, like you said, untradeable. He should be untouchable. Josh Hart is that good of a player, that important to a team, and any team would have Josh Hart. I'm talking about a second later after if a situation comes where he's not going to be having a future with the Knicks, it'll be a second that passes that someone else is going to be picking this guy up. He is that good. He is that valuable. And that's all I got to say. That's all I got.
Yeah, I mean, like we've been saying this whole episode, Josh Hart is someone that the Knicks can't afford to lose. I mean, he's one of the most, like I said, like I've been saying all episode, one of the most important players to this team. Someone that really gives you so much. Even if it's the little things, it means so much to the team long term, and it makes them so much better. That's how they're able to, get by with all these injuries right now, really, because of the stuff he's been doing. With the rebounds, the playmaking, the scoring. With the way with the injury situation we have right now, we're running like 6 or 7 healthy players. Josh Hart is basically 3 players in one guy, and that's what really makes him so valuable. I do think this is a good place to wrap the episode up, though, so we really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let us know what you think about Josh Hart and the season he is having so far in the comment section below, because we would love to hear about it and talk with you guys about that. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course this YouTube page that you are watching the video on. You can follow our personal Twitter accounts. They're right there above our heads, and we will see you guys in the next episode of Fireside Knicks. Peace out.